Creativity management tools for professionals, idea generation, provocation and movement. Provocation techniques are used to appreciate the power of provocation. Here we learn how to use provocative sentences to create new ideas. So provocation is a creative resource. We define a provocation in this context as an illogical statement that is used to provoke creative thinking. The objective is to move our mind out of usual thinking patterns and towards new, unexpected ideas. Provocation has to create temporary mental instability, and is something that we say to trigger a reaction and see what will happen next. In fact, this reaction is a constructive reaction to something which has been said or written, and it is what is interesting for us. In fact, in general, we tend to judge provocations. When we hear a provocation, we refuse it, we judge it, we say this is not acceptable, or this is not useful, this is not rational, and we just forget it and don't want to have it. In this technique, we try to, instead of judging, accepting the provocation, trying to think what is in the provocation, try to disentangle the provocation, see if there is anything inside that is useful for us, that can be used to find some ideas. This is what we call the movement. Let's see how this technique actually works. There are three fundamental steps. In the first one, given a focus purpose that we always have to have in these processes, giving a focus purpose, the first step is listing up my assumptions. What do I take for granted when I have this purpose in front of me? I need to, for example, solve a problem. The second step is challenging my assumptions, being provocative. The third one is trying to get inspired by this provocation, to react constructively and to search for ideas instead of rejecting the provocation. So, listing up my assumptions, challenging my assumptions, reacting to the challenge in search for ideas. Now, provocation is a technique that has a lot of energy, and it must be applied in a safe way. In order to do so, we need to be deliberate. In our provocations, we have to be systematic, and we have to provoke in a formal way. How do we do that? We give a signal. We say something before a provocation. And in particular, we say PO. PO could be provocative operations, for example. So we say PO and then a provocation. Let's have an example. Focus area, public transportation in our city. Focus purpose, how can we double the customer satisfaction level in 12 months? We take for granted a lot of things here. For example, here assume that customers expect punctuality. Let's challenge this assumption with a provocation. I say, Po, you have to pay double price for the ticket when you step into a delayed bus. Well, of course, it is absurd. That's the idea. Let's react to this provocation. Well, here we see that there is a connection in this sentence between the price of the ticket and the punctuality of the bus. So we start looking at this connection, and we actually forget the provocation. So some ideas could be coming from these reaction: free ride each time a bus is delayed, or for example rewards in cash for customers who report delays. You might have many other ideas out of these. Now if we take another assumption, the bus has a predetermined route and schedule. Let's try to create provocations that challenge this assumption. Po, the bus can fly between each bus stop. Po, the bus driver must be drunk while driving the bus. Po, the first traveler who entered the bus can choose the route for the day. You see, from each and one of these provocations, we can react and search for ideas that answer our purpose. Having several provocations could be useful because from disentangling each of these, we could have different ideas. If you're working in a larger group, you can split the group in subgroups and invite each subgroup to work with each of these provocations. 3 groups working with 3 different provocations and creating new ideas at the same time. There are many methods to create provocation. The first one is intuition. You see, children, they use this all the time. Anything that is said can be considered a provocation. Another way could be escape from reality, denying reality, ignoring facts, ignoring limitations. Other methods are upside down, where we try to reverse the normal direction of action or the normal order of a relation, while distorting things, changing the sequence in a process, or exaggerating, bringing something to the extreme. And finally, the method that I prefer, wishful thinking, when we can think to be in a idealized world where we can decide everything. Like, for example, I could say, Po, the airplane waits for me while I'm stuck in a traffic jam. We also have several movement methods. The first one is top of the head. Whatever comes to my mind can be a reaction to a provocation. The second one is something we have seen in another presentation, extracting the core of the provocation. What are you actually saying by saying this this absurd thing? Or moment to moment, visualizing what would happen if the provocation is true. A little bit easier, focusing on the difference between the provocation and reality is a way of moving away from the provocation and looking at something else, in this case, the difference. Or if there are any positive aspects with the provocation. Or again, if there are special circumstances in which the provocation would have value. So here we have a short summary of the 4 main methods for creating provocations and 6 main methods to move away from a given provocation. In this technique, especially in the beginning, like in any other technique, you have to establish a clear focus for your creative effort. Then you have to use the technique systematically, step 1, step 2, step 3, and then trying to be aware of what you do at each step, and repeat and practice. And here are some references for those who could be interested.